The dragon was supposed to eat her before sunrise. That was what the people of Blackmere believed. They had chained 26-year-old Mara Vale to a stone pillar on the highest ridge above the village, leaving her alone beneath a freezing sky. Her wrists were bruised. Her ankles were bleeding. And around her waist was a thick iron chain that had been locked by the village blacksmith himself. But there was something the villagers did not know. The dragon they were sacrificing Mara to had never asked for a human offering. Not once. And before the night was over, that dragon would discover exactly who had chained an innocent woman to his mountain. Blackmere had lived beneath the shadow of the creature for generations. People called him a monster. They said his enormous wings appeared beyond the northern clouds whenever the weather turned violent. They said his roar could shake snow from the mountain peaks. And the oldest villagers insisted that dragons demanded payment whenever they passed over human settlements. So when the harvest began and the dragon appeared in the sky for the 6th time that year, fear spread through Blackmere like fire through dry grass. Someone had to be chosen. That was when Magistrate Rowan Hale stepped onto the platform in the village square. He held a wooden box in his hands. Inside were dozens of folded pieces of parchment. One name, Rowan announced, his voice heavy with sorrow. One sacrifice so the rest of Blackmere may survive. People lowered their heads. Some prayed. Others pretended not to listen. But Mara knew something was wrong. 3 weeks earlier, Rowan's only son Edric had asked Mara to marry him. She had refused. Not cruelly. Not publicly. She had simply told him the truth. No. Edric had never accepted rejection well. His father accepted it even worse. So when Rowan reached into that box and unfolded the chosen name, Mara already knew. Mara Vale. Silence swallowed the square. Mara looked around. 400 villagers stood before her. Neighbors she had helped during winter. Children she had taught to grind flour. Old women whose roofs her father had repaired. And not one of them met her eyes. Her father fought through the crowd. She's innocent. Mara's younger brother tried to reach the magistrate, but 3 guards threw him to the ground. Her mother had died years ago, but Mara suddenly remembered the last thing she had told her. Never let cruel people teach you that kindness was weakness. So Mara stood still. She did not scream. She did not beg. She looked directly at Rowan. Your box was fixed. The magistrate's face tightened. Mara continued. You didn't choose me because the dragon demanded me. You chose me because your son couldn't accept my answer. A murmur passed through the crowd. Rowan's voice hardened. Take her. The guards dragged Mara toward the hill. At sunset, the blacksmith locked the final iron clasp around her. His hands were shaking. I'm sorry, he whispered. Mara looked at him. You didn't make the decision. Then she glanced toward the village. They did. The villagers walked away. One by one. No one looked back. Soon Mara was completely alone. The wind screamed across the ridge. Clouds swallowed the moon. Then she heard something. At first it sounded like distant thunder. Mara lifted her head. The sound came again. Closer. Deeper. The chains around her waist began to tremble against the stone. She stared into the darkness above. 2 enormous amber eyes appeared between the clouds. Mara's breath stopped. The dragon descended. Its wings covered the stars. It landed without a roar, without fire, without rage. Just silence. A creature older than the village itself lowered its enormous head until one amber eye was level with Mara. She was terrified. But somehow the dragon looked less angry than heartbroken. Mara swallowed. If you're here to kill me, she whispered, then please do it quickly. The dragon stared at her chains. Then it looked toward Blackmere. And something changed in those ancient eyes. Because the dragon finally understood what the villagers had done. They had not sent him a sacrifice. They had sent him an innocent woman. And for the first time in 40 years, the ancient creature remembered exactly what injustice looked like. Mara closed her eyes. Then came a sound that made her open them again. Crack. The dragon had wrapped one enormous claw around her iron chain. And it was beginning to pull. But Mara had no idea that breaking those chains would be the easiest thing this dragon was about to do. Because by morning, the people who had sacrificed her would discover something far more terrifying than a hungry dragon. They would discover that the creature they feared had chosen her side. The chain snapped. Mara expected pain. Instead, she heard the iron hit the stone. She stared down at the broken links lying beside her boots. For several seconds she could not move. The dragon had not even strained. One claw had been enough. The creature lowered its enormous head again, and Mara instinctively stepped backward until her shoulders touched the cold pillar. She had spent her entire life hearing stories about dragons. Stories about villages burned to ash. About soldiers disappearing beneath enormous claws. About women carried into the mountains and never seen again. But none of those stories had prepared her for what happened next. The dragon reached toward her wrist. Mara flinched. The enormous claw stopped. It did not touch her. Instead, one curved talon carefully slipped beneath the metal cuff. There was a tiny movement. A twist. A click. The cuff fell open. Mara stared. The dragon moved to her other wrist. Another click. Another piece of iron dropped into the frost. Then it looked at her ankles. Mara almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because she suddenly realized she was standing in front of a creature large enough to destroy the entire village, and that creature was being more careful with her than the guards had been. "Thank you," she whispered. The dragon remained silent. Mara rubbed her wrists. They were red and swollen where the iron had cut into her skin. Then she noticed something strange. The dragon wasn't looking at her anymore. It was looking down the mountain, toward Blackmere. Hundreds of tiny lights glowed below. Every house had its doors locked. Every window was shut. The same people who had sent Mara up the mountain were now hiding from the creature they claimed demanded her sacrifice. Mara followed the dragon's gaze. "You don't want me." The dragon slowly turned its head. Mara's voice trembled. "Do you?" The amber eye remained fixed on her. She looked at the broken chains. Then at the dragon. "They told everyone you wanted a sacrifice." The dragon's expression did not change. Mara swallowed. "But you never asked for one, did you?" For a moment only the wind answered. Then the dragon turned its body. Mara expected it to leave. Instead it walked toward the narrow path leading down the mountain. And stopped. Its enormous body blocked the entire trail. Mara stared at it. Then realization struck her. It wasn't leaving. It was guarding the path. Guarding her. Mara's lips parted. "You think they're going to come back?" The dragon lowered itself onto the frozen ground. Its wings folded slowly against its sides. And its eyes remained fixed on Blackmere. Mara looked toward the village. "They're afraid of you." The dragon didn't move. Mara almost smiled. Good. It was the first time she had smiled that night. But the smile disappeared when she remembered her father. Her brother. The way her father had screamed as the guards dragged her away. Mara's eyes filled with tears. "They're going to punish my family for this." The dragon turned toward her. And somehow that made the tears fall faster. Mara sat against the stone. She covered her face. "I shouldn't have said no." The words came out broken. "I should have just agreed." She had been strong in the square. Strong when the chains were placed around her. Strong when everyone walked away. But alone on that mountain, with the cold biting through her clothes, Mara finally allowed herself to feel what she had been refusing to feel. She cried for her mother. She cried for her father. She cried because the people she trusted had chosen her life as the easiest thing to sacrifice. And most of all, she cried because a part of her still wished someone from the village had stood up and said, "She's ours. You don't get to take her." The dragon moved. Mara looked up. Its enormous head came closer. She froze. But the dragon didn't threaten her. It simply lowered its head beside her. Close enough that Mara could feel its warmth against her frozen hands. She hesitated. Then she placed her palm against one rough scale. Warm. Almost impossibly warm. The dragon stayed still. Mara's voice became barely audible. "My mother used to say that monsters don't always look like monsters." The dragon's amber eye shifted toward her. Mara gave a weak laugh through her tears. Maybe she was right. The dragon made a deep sound in its throat. Not a roar. Something softer. Almost like a distant hum. Mara leaned against its enormous jaw. For the first time since sunset, she wasn't afraid. But neither Mara nor the dragon knew that someone was watching them. Far below, behind a shuttered window in the magistrate's house, Rowan Hale stood motionless. He had expected the dragon to devour Mara. Instead, he saw his greatest mistake standing beside a creature that had just broken Imperial-grade iron like thread. And Rowan understood something that made his blood run cold. If Mara survived the night, she could tell everyone the truth. He could not allow that. Rowan turned away from the window. "Wake the guards." His son stared at him. "Father, what are you going to do?" Rowan's face hardened. "What I should have done before we sent her up there." Back on the mountain, Mara had finally fallen asleep beside the dragon. She didn't see the figure leaving the village. She didn't hear the horses being saddled. And she didn't know that 4 men were already climbing the mountain from the western side, carrying ropes, blades, and one very different plan. They weren't coming to rescue Mara. They were coming to silence her. But they had made one terrible mistake. They thought the dragon was asleep. It wasn't. And when the first man stepped onto the ridge, two amber eyes opened in the darkness. The dragon lifted its head. Mara slept peacefully against its warm scales. And for the first time that night the creature showed its teeth. The men had come looking for a helpless sacrifice. Instead, they had walked directly into the territory of something that had spent 40 years waiting for a reason to protect someone again. The first man reached the ridge just before dawn. He took one more step. Then the dragon opened its eyes. The man froze. Behind him, 3 others stopped moving. For several seconds nobody breathed. The dragon's enormous head rose from the ground, and its amber eyes fixed on the men climbing toward the ridge. It did not roar. It did not need to. Its silence was worse. One of the men tightened his grip around his sword. "Don't move," he whispered. The dragon's gaze dropped to the blade, then returned to his face. Mara woke at the sound of metal scraping against stone. Her eyes opened slowly. She was still leaning against the dragon's warm scales. For one confused second she forgot where she was. Then she saw the men. Her stomach dropped. "Get away from me." The words came out sharper than she expected. The 4 men looked at her. One of them lowered his weapon. "Mara, we're taking you home." "No." The answer came immediately. The man frowned. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Mara stood. Her legs were stiff from the cold, but she forced herself upright. "You chained me to this mountain. Now you came back because you're afraid I survived." The men exchanged nervous glances. That was all the proof she needed. Mara looked toward the dragon. Was watching them. Waiting. The tallest man stepped forward. "Magistrate Hale wants you brought back before anyone hears what happened here." Mara felt something inside her break. Not fear. Something colder. "Then tell him I'm not going." The man's face hardened. "Mara. Tell Rowan Hale himself." Her voice shook, but she didn't lower it. "Tell him the woman he tried to murder is still alive." The dragon moved. One enormous foreleg came down between Mara and the men. The impact shook frost from the rocks. The 4 men stumbled backward. Mara stared at the dragon. It had placed itself between her and them again. Exactly as it had done during the night. Something about that made her chest ache. No one had protected her in the village. Not her neighbors. Not the guards. Not the people who had watched her father get beaten. Yet this ancient creature, which had every reason to hate humans, had decided that her life mattered. The tallest man raised his sword. "Kill it." Mara's heart stopped. The dragon's head snapped toward him. A deep growl rolled across the mountain. The sound was so powerful that the men visibly flinched. Mara shouted, "Don't." The dragon looked at her. Mara stepped forward. "Please." The dragon remained perfectly still. Mara turned toward the men. "Go back." The tallest man stared at her. "You think this thing will protect you forever?" Mara looked at the dragon. Then back at him. "No." Her eyes hardened. "I think it already protected me longer than any of you ever did." The man charged. Everything happened at once. The dragon moved. Its tail swept across the ground and knocked 2 men off their feet. The third dropped his sword and ran. The leader barely had time to raise his shield before the dragon's claw slammed into the ground beside him. Stone exploded. The man fell backward. His sword flew from his hand. The dragon lowered its head until its jaws were inches from his face. The man screamed. Mara saw the dragon's teeth. Huge. White. Sharp enough to tear through armor. But it did not bite. Mara understood. The dragon wasn't hunting them. It was warning them. "Leave," she said. The man looked at her in disbelief. "You'll regret this." Mara's expression didn't change. "Maybe." She pointed down the mountain. "But you won't be here when I do." The men scrambled away. Mara watched until they disappeared into the fog. Then she turned toward the dragon. "You could have killed them." The dragon blinked. "But you didn't." It lowered its head. Mara placed a trembling hand against its scales. "Why?" There was no answer. Not in words. But the dragon turned its head toward the northern mountains. Mara followed its gaze. The sky was beginning to brighten. For the first time she noticed the scars. They ran beneath the dragon's shoulder scales. Old scars. Deep ones. And above them were strange faded markings. They weren't natural. They looked like symbols. Mara stepped closer. "Someone did that to you." The dragon became completely still. Mara traced one mark with her eyes. A crown. Then another symbol beneath it. A wing. Her breath caught. She remembered an old story her mother used to tell her. A story about a dragon that once carried an emperor. A dragon that vanished after its rider died. Mara stared at the creature. You were someone's dragon. The amber eyes met hers. And suddenly the dragon's silence felt different. Not empty. Lonely. Mara's heart tightened. How long have you been alone? The dragon lowered its head. Mara whispered. Years? No response. 10? Still nothing. 20? The dragon looked away. Mara's voice softened. 40? The dragon's eyes returned to her. Mara stopped breathing. 40 years. She understood then. This wasn't simply a monster guarding a woman. It was something ancient recognizing another person who had been abandoned by those she trusted. Mara leaned against its neck. I know what it feels like. The dragon closed its eyes. And for a moment the mountain was completely silent. Then a distant horn sounded from the valley. Mara straightened. The dragon lifted its head. Another horn answered. Then another. Mara looked down. The entire village was moving. People were pouring into the square. Horses were being prepared. And above the rooftops flew a banner Mara had never expected to see in Blackmere. A silver crown surrounded by 9 black wings. Her face went pale. The Empire. The dragon's posture changed instantly. Its wings opened halfway. Mara looked at it. Why are they here? The answer came from below. A rider galloped toward the village gates carrying a sealed imperial message. Mara couldn't hear what he shouted. But she didn't need to. The entire village had gone silent. Because the Empire had finally heard the rumor. The lost dragon of the old emperor had been found. And it was guarding a woman the village had tried to sacrifice. Mara looked at the dragon. The dragon looked toward the approaching army. Neither of them knew what would happen next. But far below, Magistrate Rowan Hale was already on his knees. Because the imperial seal on that message carried a name he had spent his entire life fearing. Emperor Adrian Vane. And the emperor was not coming to ask why Mara had been chained. He was coming because the dragon belonged to his grandfather. And if that ancient creature had chosen Mara, then the most powerful man in the kingdom was about to discover exactly what Blackmere had done to her. The imperial army did not attack Blackmere. That frightened the villagers more than an attack would have. 9 dragons descended through the morning clouds, their enormous wings blotting out the pale sunlight. Beneath them flew the crimson dragon of the imperial house, carrying Emperor Adrian Vane. No horns sounded in celebration. No one cheered. The people of Blackmere simply stood in the square and watched the Empire arrive. Because everyone knew why they were there. The story had already reached the capital. A woman had been chained to a mountain. A dragon had broken her free. And now that dragon refused to leave her side. Adrian dismounted before the village hall. He was only 35, but there was nothing young about his expression. His eyes moved across the villagers. Then stopped on Rowan Hale. The magistrate bowed so quickly that he nearly fell. Your Majesty. Adrian didn't acknowledge him. Where is she? Rowan swallowed. Who, Majesty? The Emperor's eyes hardened. You know exactly who. Silence. Adrian stepped closer. Mara Vale. Rowan's face went pale. She is on Sentinel Ridge. Alive. Rowan hesitated. That single hesitation answered everything. Adrian turned toward the mountain. How long? Rowan's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Adrian looked back at him. How long has she been chained? Your Majesty, there were circumstances. How long? One night. The Emperor's expression changed. Not anger. Something worse. Disappointment. One night, he repeated quietly. His gaze moved toward the mountain. Then why does your entire village look like it has been waiting for a funeral? No one answered. Adrian walked toward the ridge. His guards followed. But halfway up he stopped. The dragon was already watching him. Mara stood behind it. The enormous creature had positioned itself between her and the approaching emperor exactly as it had done with the villagers. Adrian stared. For a long moment, neither man nor dragon moved. Then Adrian whispered, Old friend. Mara looked at him. The emperor's voice cracked. The dragon's name had not been spoken in the capital for decades. Orcs. The creature lowered its enormous head. Not completely. Just enough. Adrian's eyes filled with something Mara hadn't expected to see in an emperor. Grief. Real grief. You were alive. Oryx gave a low sound. Adrian stepped forward. The dragon immediately shifted its body. One wing moved between them. Adrian stopped. His face tightened. Then he looked behind the dragon. At Mara. Who are you? Mara almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because after everything that had happened, The Emperor was asking her name as though she were the mystery. Mara Vale. Adrian's eyes moved to the broken chains, the iron cuffs, the blood around her wrists. His expression became cold. Who did this? Mara didn't answer immediately. She looked down the mountain, at the village, at the people who had watched, at the homes where her family still lived. Then she said, "The magistrate." Adrian looked toward Blackmere. His name? Rowan Hale. The Emperor turned to his captain. "Bring him." Rowan was brought up the mountain in chains. His son came with him. The same man whose pride had started everything. When Rowan saw Mara standing free beside Oryx, his knees nearly collapsed. "Your Majesty, please. You have to understand." Adrian looked at the broken chains, then at Mara's wrists, then at Rowan. "Explain." Rowan began talking. He spoke about tradition, about fear, about protecting the village, about the dragon's supposed demands. He talked for nearly 5 minutes. Adrian listened. Then he asked one question. "Show me the decree." Rowan stopped. "What decree?" "The imperial law requiring you to sacrifice a woman to a dragon." Rowan's face emptied. "There is no such decree." "Exactly." Adrian's voice became dangerously calm. "You invented it." Rowan fell silent. Adrian turned toward the village. "Did any of you see an imperial order demanding tribute?" Nobody spoke. "Did anyone hear the dragon demand Mara?" Nothing. The Emperor looked back at Rowan. "Then you did not sacrifice her to a dragon." He stepped closer. "You sacrificed her to your own fear." Mara's eyes filled with tears. Not because of Rowan. Because someone had finally said the words she had desperately needed someone to say. She had not been weak. She had not been cursed. She had not been the price of anyone's survival. She had been betrayed. And someone powerful enough to make the entire village listen had finally named it. But Adrian wasn't finished. He looked at Mara. "I owe you an apology." She stared at him. "For what?" "For arriving too late." Mara's lips trembled. She hadn't expected that. No emperor had ever apologized to her. No magistrate. No guard. No neighbor. And somehow those 4 words hurt more than cruelty. Because they reminded her how long she had waited for someone to care. Mara looked away. "I don't need pity." "I didn't offer pity." Adrian's voice softened. "I offered an apology." Mara wiped her eyes. Behind her, Oryx lowered his enormous head beside her shoulder. Adrian watched the movement. Then his expression changed. He recognized something. Something no one else had noticed. "How long has he been doing that?" Mara looked confused. "Doing what?" "Positioning himself between you and everyone else." Mara glanced at the dragon. "Since last night." Adrian stared at Oryx. Then at Mara. His captain stepped closer. "Your Majesty?" Adrian didn't answer. He looked at the ancient dragon's posture. The lowered head. The protective wing. The deliberate placement of his body. His face slowly changed from confusion to disbelief. "No." Mara frowned. "What?" Adrian looked at her. "That's not protection." Mara's heart skipped. "Then what is it?" The Emperor stared at Oryx as if he had just witnessed something impossible. "My grandfather spent his entire life teaching me what a dragon's bond looked like." Oryx moved closer to Mara. His enormous head rested beside her. Adrian whispered, "That dragon has chosen you." Mara stepped backward. "No." "Yes." "That isn't possible." "It shouldn't be." The Emperor's voice was almost a whisper now. "Oryx has been without a rider for 40 years. Mara looked at the dragon. Oryx's amber eye met hers. And suddenly, she remembered the strange way he had watched her from the moment he arrived. The way he had broken her chains. The way he had guarded her. The way he had stayed awake while she slept. Mara's voice broke. "But I didn't choose him." Adrian looked at her. "That's what makes this so extraordinary." Oryx suddenly raised his head. His eyes turned toward the northern sky. Every dragon in the Imperial flight reacted at once. Wings spread. Soldiers reached for weapons. Adrian looked upward. A shadow was moving through the clouds. Something huge. Something that wasn't part of his flight. Oryx gave a warning roar that shook the mountain. Mara grabbed his scales. "What's happening?" Adrian's face went pale. He knew that sound. And whatever was approaching wasn't coming for the Emperor. It was coming for Mara. The Emperor looked at his captain. "Get everyone off this ridge." Then he looked directly at Mara. "Whatever happens next, do not leave Oryx." Mara's heart began pounding. "Why?" Adrian stared into the darkening clouds. "Because if I'm right." A second dragon emerged from the storm. And unlike Oryx, this one wasn't coming to protect her. It was coming to take her. The second dragon came through the clouds like a falling mountain. Its wings were black. Not gray like Oryx. Not crimson like the Emperor's mount. Black. Lightning flashed behind it, revealing two enormous horns and a long scar running from its left eye to its jaw. The Imperial dragons immediately spread into formation. Soldiers shouted. Mara stepped backward. Oryx moved forward. One moment he was beside her. The next, his entire body stood between Mara and the approaching creature. His wings opened. Mara had never seen anything so enormous. Stay behind him. Adrian shouted. Mara pressed herself against Oryx's scales. The black dragon descended toward the ridge. But it didn't attack. It circled once. Then again. Its eyes remained fixed on Mara. Oryx growled. The sound rolled through the mountain. The black dragon answered. A roar exploded across the sky. Windows shattered in Blackmere. Horses screamed below. Mara covered her ears. Why does it want me? Adrian didn't answer. Mara turned toward him. Emperor? Adrian was staring at Oryx. Then at the black dragon. His expression had become deeply troubled. I don't know. You're the Emperor. You have to know something. I know enough to understand that this is not normal. The black dragon suddenly folded its wings. It dropped. Straight toward Mara. Oryx launched himself upward. The collision shook the entire ridge. Mara fell. Adrian caught her before her head struck the stone. Are you hurt? No. She looked up. The sky had disappeared behind two battling dragons. Oryx and the black dragon twisted through the clouds, claws flashing between wings. Mara watched in horror. He's going to die. Adrian pulled her farther from the edge. Oryx has survived wars older than this village. That doesn't mean he's invincible. The Emperor looked at her. Something in her voice made him pause. She wasn't speaking about a dragon. She was terrified of losing the first creature that had protected her when nobody else would. Mara's eyes filled. He saved me. Adrian's expression softened. I know. No, you don't. Mara turned toward him. When everyone else looked at me, they saw a problem. A sacrifice. Someone they could give away so they wouldn't have to be afraid. Her voice cracked. He looked at me and saw a person. Adrian said nothing. Mara wiped her face. Don't let them kill him. The Emperor looked toward the sky. Then he gave a command. Hold fire. His captain stared at him. Majesty? Nobody attacks either dragon. But Oryx. I said hold. Above them, Oryx suddenly dropped from the clouds. The black dragon followed. Oryx twisted at the last second. The black dragon's claws missed his throat. They crashed onto the ridge. Stone exploded. Mara screamed. Oryx rolled. The black dragon rose first. Its head turned toward Mara. And that was when Mara noticed something. The creature wasn't looking at her like prey. It was looking at the scar on her wrist. The scar left by the iron cuff. The black dragon stared at it. Then its eyes changed. Mara slowly raised her hand. The dragon stopped. Oryx. The ancient dragon turned. Mara pointed. He's looking at my chains. Oryx went completely still. Adrian's face changed. What did you say? He's looking at where they were. The black dragon lowered its head. Its nostrils flared. It smelled the iron. Mara suddenly remembered something. The men who had come before dawn. The ropes. The weapons. And something one of them had said. Tell Rowan Hale himself. Mara looked at Adrian. The magistrate. What about him? The men who came for me said Rowan sent them. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Mara continued. They knew exactly where I was. Adrian turned toward the captain. Find Hale. He's in the village. Bring him here. The captain hesitated. Alive. Adrian's expression became ice cold. Preferably. The captain ran down the ridge. Mara looked back at the black dragon. It was still watching her wrist. Then Oryx stepped between them. The black dragon gave a low growl. Oryx answered. Mara suddenly realized something. They weren't fighting over territory. They were arguing over her. And she had no idea why. Then the black dragon did something that terrified everyone. It lowered its head. Not toward Mara. Toward Oryx. And Oryx responded by lowering his own. For several seconds, the two ancient creatures stood motionless. Adrian stared. What are they doing? Mara whispered. Remembering. Adrian looked at her. She didn't know why she had said it. She simply felt it. The black dragon lifted its head. A sound came from its throat. Not a roar. A mournful call. Oryx answered. Mara's chest tightened. There was grief in those sounds. Old grief. The kind that survived decades. Then the black dragon turned toward the northern mountains. Oryx followed its gaze. Adrian suddenly understood. There's something in the north. Mara looked at him. What? Before he could answer, hoofbeats thundered up the mountain. The Imperial captain returned. Behind him were 6 guards dragging Rowan Hale. But the magistrate wasn't alone. His son Edric was there too. And when Mara saw Edric's face, every bit of warmth disappeared from her body. Because Edric wasn't frightened. He was smiling. Mara stared at him. Why are you smiling? Edric looked toward the black dragon. Then toward Oryx. Finally he looked at Mara. Because you still don't understand. Adrian stepped forward. Explain yourself. Edric laughed quietly. You think my father invented the sacrifice? Mara's heart stopped. What? Edric's smile widened. He didn't choose you because you rejected me. Rowan suddenly shouted. Edric, stop. The young man's expression changed. For the first time he looked afraid. Adrian turned toward Rowan. Stop him. 2 guards seized the magistrate. Mara stared at Edric. Then why me? Edric looked at her wrist. His voice dropped. Because of what your mother left behind. Mara went completely still. My mother? Edric nodded. You thought she died knowing nothing about this place. Mara's face drained of color. Don't talk about my mother. Edric took 1 step closer. She wasn't just a miller's wife, Mara. Oryx suddenly roared. The black dragon roared with him. The entire ridge shook. Edric flinched. But he continued. Your mother knew what was buried beneath the northern mountain. Mara couldn't breathe. Adrian's eyes narrowed. What is buried there? Edric looked at the Emperor. Then at Mara. The reason those dragons disappeared. Silence. Mara stared at him. Her mother's face flashed through her memory. The old stories. The warnings. The strange symbol Mara had seen carved into her mother's wooden chest as a child. A crown. A wing. And beneath them, a third symbol she had never understood. Mara looked toward the northern mountains. For the first time, she wondered if the dragon hadn't chosen her because she was helpless. Maybe it had chosen her because it knew exactly who she was. Then the black dragon suddenly spread its wings. Oryx followed. Both creatures turned toward the north. Adrian looked at the dark horizon. And somewhere beyond those mountains something answered. A deep roar. Not from one dragon. Not from 2. From many. Mara's blood ran cold. Adrian whispered the words nobody wanted to hear. Those aren't lost dragons. Mara looked at him. Then what are they? The Emperor's face had gone pale. An army. And somewhere beneath the northern mountains, something ancient had just awakened. For several seconds nobody moved. The northern mountains were silent again. Too silent. Mara stared into the distance, trying to understand what she had just heard. An army. Not soldiers. Dragons. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands, hidden somewhere beyond those frozen peaks. And somehow her mother had known about them. My mother knew? Mara barely recognized her own voice. Edric looked at her. She knew more than that. Mara stepped toward him. What did she know? Rowan struggled against the guards. Edric, enough. Mara turned toward him. You knew too. The magistrate looked away. That was answer enough. Mara's chest tightened. All her life, she had believed her mother died as an ordinary woman. A quiet woman who had spent her days baking bread, repairing clothes, and helping Mara's father run the mill. But now everyone was looking at her like her mother had been something else entirely. Tell me. Edric swallowed. Your mother came to Blackmere 30 years ago. Mara frowned. She was born here. No. The word struck harder than Mara expected. Edric continued. She came from the north. Mara looked toward the mountains. Oryx stood beside her. The old dragon had gone completely still. His amber eyes were fixed on Edric. Mara noticed. You knew her. Oryx's gaze shifted toward her. Mara's breathing stopped. You knew my mother. The dragon lowered his head. Mara stepped closer. Did you? Oryx made a low sound. It wasn't a roar. It sounded almost like grief. Mara's eyes filled instantly. She placed both hands against his enormous face. Why didn't you tell me? Of course he couldn't answer. But Mara suddenly understood why he had watched her so strangely from the beginning. Why he had reacted to her voice. Why he had stayed. There had been something familiar about her. Something he recognized before she recognized him. Adrian approached slowly. Mara. She didn't look at him. Don't. He stopped. Mara wiped her tears. Everyone keeps telling me pieces of my own life like I'm the last person who deserves the truth. Adrian's expression softened. You deserve all of it. Then tell me. The Emperor looked at Edric. Start talking. Edric glanced at Rowan. His father shook his head. Edric ignored him. Your mother wasn't simply from the northern mountains. She belonged to a group called the Keepers. Mara frowned. Keepers of what? The dragons. Oryx suddenly lifted his head. The black dragon answered with a distant call. Mara looked between them. Why would they need people to keep them? Edric's voice became quieter. Because something happened 40 years ago. Adrian's face hardened. The Imperial records say the northern dragons disappeared after my grandfather's death. They didn't disappear, Edric said. They were imprisoned. The words seemed to drain the warmth from the mountain. Mara looked at Adrian. The Emperor's expression had changed. What imprisoned them? Edric shook his head. Not what? He pointed toward Mara. Who? Mara stared at him. Me? No. Your bloodline. Mara took a step backward. Adrian immediately moved closer. Explain. Edric hesitated. Your mother was one of the last people who could communicate with the old dragon clans. She discovered that someone inside the Imperial court was trying to control them. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Who? We never learned the name. Never? Edric looked toward Rowan. Because your mother destroyed the records before she disappeared. Mara's heart hammered. She didn't disappear. Edric looked at her. That's what she wanted you to believe. Mara froze. Her mother had died when she was 11. Or so she had been told. She remembered the fever. The cold room. Her father's red eyes. The funeral. The tiny wooden box her mother had left behind. Mara suddenly remembered the symbol carved into its lid. The crown. The wing. And the third mark. She turned toward Adrian. My mother left something. What? A box. Where is it? At the mill. Rowan suddenly shouted. Burned. Mara turned. The magistrate's face had gone white. What did you say? Rowan looked at her. The mill burned 3 years ago. Mara's stomach dropped. She remembered. The fire had destroyed half the building. Her father had rebuilt it. But her mother's box had been kept in a locked room beneath the old floorboards. Mara had never found it afterward. She always thought the fire had destroyed it. But Rowan knew about it. Oh. Mara slowly walked toward him. You've been searching for that box. Rowan said nothing. Mara's voice became colder. You weren't angry because I rejected your son. Edric looked at his father. Mara continued. You needed me. Rowan finally met her eyes. His expression wasn't hatred anymore. It was fear. Your mother knew what was beneath Sentinel Ridge. Mara looked toward the stone where she had been chained. The mountain. Rowan nodded. There is an entrance under it. Adrian's eyes hardened. To the dragon prison? Rowan didn't answer. Then the ground moved. Not a tremor. A violent jolt. Mara stumbled. Adrian caught her arm. Oryx roared. The black dragon spread its wings. Far beneath their feet came a sound like stone splitting apart. Once. Twice. Then the ridge cracked. Mara stared at the ground. A thin line opened between the rocks. Warm air rushed through it. Warm air. From beneath a frozen mountain. Then came another sound. A heartbeat. Slow. Massive. Mara felt it through the soles of her boots. Boom. Everyone went silent. Boom. Oryx lowered his head. Boom. The black dragon suddenly bowed. Not to Mara. Not to Adrian. Toward the mountain. Mara's face went pale. Something is down there. Adrian drew his sword. Everyone moved back. But Mara didn't. She stepped toward the crack. Oryx immediately blocked her. Mara looked up at him. You know what's down there. The dragon stared at her. You've been there before. Oryx didn't move. Mara's voice broke. Is my mother down there? For the first time the ancient dragon looked away. Mara stopped breathing. Adrian stared at Oryx. Then at Mara. And he understood the same thing she did. The dragon hadn't looked away because he didn't know. He looked away because he did. Mara's knees nearly gave out. Her mother had been dead for 15 years. At least that was what everyone had told her. Then the crack beneath Sentinel Ridge widened. A deafening roar erupted from below. Snow cascaded down the mountain. The black dragon launched into the air. Oryx wrapped one enormous wing around Mara. And from the darkness beneath the mountain came a woman's voice. Weak, frightened, but unmistakably familiar. Mara? Mara's entire body froze. She knew that voice. She had heard it in dreams for 15 years. Her mother's voice. Alive. And beneath the mountain, something ancient began breaking its chains. The voice came again. Mara stopped breathing. She knew that voice. She had spent 15 years trying to forget it. Her mother's voice. Weak. Frightened. But alive. Mama? The word escaped before Mara could stop it. She dropped to her knees beside the widening crack. Adrian grabbed her shoulder. Don't. Mara pulled away. That's my mother. We don't know what's down there. I do. Her eyes filled with tears. I know her voice. The mountain shook again. Oryx moved in front of Mara, blocking the opening with his enormous body. Mara stared up at him. Move. The dragon refused. Please. Oryx lowered his head. Mara placed her hand against his scales. You saved me from chains. Her voice broke. Don't become another thing that keeps me from her. Something changed in Oryx's eyes. Slowly he stepped aside. Mara crawled toward the opening. Adrian immediately followed. You're not going alone. They descended through the broken stone. The passage beneath Sentinel Ridge was far older than Blackmere. The walls were covered in carvings. Dragons, crowns, riders, and dozens of names scratched into the stone. Mara ran her fingers across them. Then she saw one. Elena Vale. Her mother's name. Mara's knees weakened. Adrian caught her. She's been here. Mara stared at the carving. She was here. Oryx followed them into the passage. The ancient dragon's shoulders scraped against the stone. His eyes remained fixed ahead. They walked deeper. The air grew warmer. Then they heard chains. Mara's heart pounded. She's here. The passage opened into an enormous underground chamber. Mara stopped. Her mother was there. Not dead. Not a ghost. A woman with silver threaded through her dark hair stood behind an iron barrier, one hand gripping the bars. She looked older. Much older. Her face was thinner. Her eyes were tired. But Mara knew her immediately. Mara. Mara couldn't move. Her mother covered her mouth. For 15 years, Elena had imagined this moment. But nothing had prepared her for seeing her daughter standing in front of her. Mara finally ran. She crashed into the bars. Mama? Elena grabbed her hands through the gap. Both women began crying. Mara pressed her forehead against her mother's. You were dead. Elena shook her head. I needed you to believe I was. Why? Because they were looking for you. Mara pulled away. Who? Elena looked toward Adrian. Then Oryx. Her expression changed. She recognized the dragon. He's alive. Oryx lowered his head. Elena's eyes filled with tears. I knew he would find you. Mara stared at her. Find me? Elena nodded. Your father didn't know everything. I couldn't tell him. Then tell me now. Elena looked at the ceiling. The chamber trembled. There's no time. Mara's voice became angry through her tears. I lost 15 years because you decided I didn't deserve the truth. Elena flinched. Mara immediately regretted the words. But they had been waiting inside her for too long. You let me think you were dead. I know. You let me grieve you. I know. I thought I wasn't worth staying for. Elena's face collapsed. No. She gripped Mara's hands. Never believe that. Mara began crying harder. Then why? Elena looked at Oryx. Because your blood carries something the Empire has been searching for. Adrian stepped forward. What? Elena's eyes moved to him. The first dragon bond. Adrian went still. Elena continued. Before emperors rode dragons, before the imperial flight existed, there were people who could speak to dragons without chains, without commands, without weapons. She looked at Mara. Your ancestors were among them. Mara stared at her. That's why Oryx chose me? Yes. Mara looked toward the ancient dragon. Elena's voice softened. He recognized the blood. Mara shook her head. But why did he protect me? Elena smiled through her tears. Because you were never just another descendant. Mara frowned. Elena whispered. You have the same gift I had. Oryx suddenly raised his head. The chamber filled with a deep rumble. Then Mara heard something. Not with her ears. Inside her mind. A voice. Ancient. Heavy. Broken. Do not trust the crown. Mara stumbled backward. Adrian reached for her. What happened? Mara looked at him. For the first time, fear entered her expression. Oryx spoke to me. Adrian froze. Elena nodded. He can speak to her. Mara stared at the dragon. The amber eyes were locked onto hers. Then another voice entered her mind. They're coming. Mara looked toward the passage. Who? Oryx's answer came like thunder inside her skull. The ones who chained us. Suddenly the chamber shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Elena's face went pale. They found us. Adrian drew his sword. Who? Elena looked toward him. The people who started all of this. A deep metallic sound echoed through the tunnel. One chain. Then another. Then dozens. Mara looked behind the iron barrier. Only then did she realize what was hidden in the darkness beyond her mother. Massive shapes. Dragon after dragon. Some were chained to the stone walls. Others lay motionless on the floor. Ancient dragons. Young dragons. Injured dragons. All imprisoned beneath the mountain. Mara's hand covered her mouth. How many? Elena looked around. Enough to destroy every kingdom that ever betrayed them. Adrian stared at the prisoners. His sword slowly lowered. My grandfather didn't know. Elena looked at him. He knew something. Adrian's face hardened. Explain. Your grandfather discovered the prison near the end of his reign. He tried to free them. Mara's eyes widened. But he died. He was killed. Silence. Adrian's expression changed completely. By whom? Elena looked directly at him. The same people who are coming here now. Oryx suddenly roared. The other dragons answered. The chamber shook as thousands of voices rose together. Then the entrance exploded. Stone and fire blasted into the chamber. Mara fell. Adrian pulled her behind him. Through the smoke came soldiers wearing black armor. Not imperial armor. Black armor. At their front stood a man Mara had never seen before. He removed his helmet. Elena whispered his name. Lord Varric. The man smiled. You've made this much harder than it needed to be, Elena? Mara stood. Varric looked at her. His smile disappeared. So this is the daughter. Mara stepped closer to her mother. Varric's eyes narrowed. The bloodline survived. Adrian raised his sword. You are trespassing on imperial territory. Varric laughed. Your Majesty, you still believe this is about your empire. He looked at the chained dragons. It never was. Mara felt Oryx's presence inside her mind again. Run. She stared at him. What? The dragon's eyes moved toward the ceiling. Mara looked up. A strange red glow was spreading through the cracks above them. Elena saw it too. Her face turned white. Varric. He smiled. Yes. Mara's stomach dropped. What is that? Elena grabbed her daughter's face. The mountain is going to collapse. Adrian looked toward the imprisoned dragons. Then released them. Varric's smile vanished. No. He raised one hand. Behind him, the soldiers lifted strange metal devices. The dragons began screaming. Mara's blood ran cold. Varric looked directly at her. You were never chosen as a sacrifice, Mara? He pointed toward the ancient prisoners. You were chosen as a key. And when the machines activated, every dragon in the chamber screamed at once. Every dragon in the chamber screamed. Mara dropped to her knees. The sound wasn't simply loud. It was pain. Thousands of voices seemed to tear through the mountain at once, shaking the stone beneath her hands. Oryx roared. Mara felt his voice inside her mind. Break the machines. She looked toward the black-armored soldiers. Their metal devices were glowing red. Chains around the imprisoned dragons tightened. Mara stood. Adrian? The Emperor understood immediately. Take the machines. His soldiers charged. The chamber erupted into chaos. Steel struck steel. Dragons tore against their restraints. Lord Varric shouted orders. Mara ran toward her mother. Elena reached through the bars. Don't come closer. Mara stopped. Why? Because the key isn't me. Elena looked directly at her. It's you. Mara stared. Varric heard her. He turned. Too late. He pulled a small black object from beneath his coat. Mara recognized the symbol carved into it. The crown. The wing. And the third mark. Her mother's symbol. What is that? Varric smiled. The seal your mother stole from us. Elena's face went pale. Varric, don't. He pressed the seal against the stone. The entire chamber shook. Every dragon stopped moving. Even Oryx froze. Mara felt something pull at her chest. A strange warmth spread through her body. Then she heard hundreds of voices. Not through her ears. Inside her mind. Open. Mara fell against the wall. No. Oryx's voice came through the noise. Mara, listen to me. She gripped her head. I can't. You can. The ancient dragon's voice was stronger now. You were born for this. Mara looked toward him. Oryx was still chained. Blood ran beneath his scales. And suddenly Mara understood. The dragons weren't waiting for someone to save them. They were waiting for someone to command them. But she wasn't going to command them. She was going to ask. Mara closed her eyes. She remembered the mountain, the chains, the village, her mother's voice, and the first thing she had ever said to Oryx. If you are what they say you are, be quick. She remembered his answer. He hadn't killed her. He had broken the chains. Mara opened her eyes. I won't control you. The chamber became silent. She looked at the imprisoned dragons. I won't ask you to serve me. Varric shouted. Stop her. A soldier charged. Adrian intercepted him. Mara raised both hands. I only want to know one thing. She looked toward the dragons. Do you want to be free? For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then Oryx lifted his head. The ancient dragon roared. Every dragon answered. The sound was so enormous that the stone ceiling cracked. Mara screamed. Then break them. Oryx pulled. The chains around his body snapped. The black dragon tore free next. Then another. Then another. Across the chamber, ancient restraints shattered one after another. Varric stared in horror. No. A dragon broke through the ceiling. Another tore apart a stone wall. The imprisoned creatures surged toward freedom. Varric ran. Mara watched him disappear into the smoke. Then Elena shouted. Mara. Mara turned. The prison around her mother was collapsing. Mara ran toward her. Adrian followed. He struck the lock with his sword. Nothing. Again. The metal bent, but did not break. Mara looked at Oryx. Help me? Oryx moved toward them. His enormous claw reached through the falling debris. One talon touched the lock. Mara placed her hand against his scales. Together. The lock exploded. Elena fell into Mara's arms. For a moment, neither woman spoke. Then Mara held her mother like she was 11 years old again. I thought you died. Elena buried her face in her daughter's hair. I thought I would never see you again. Mara began sobbing. You left me. I know. You let me hate you. I know. Why? Elena pulled back. Because if they knew you were my daughter, they would have hunted you. Mara stared at her. Elena touched her face. I would rather have you hate me alive than love me from inside a prison. Mara broke. She pulled her mother into another embrace. Behind them, Oryx watched. His amber eyes were wet. Adrian noticed. He looked at the ancient dragon. Then at Mara. He's crying. Mara laughed through her tears. Don't tell him. Oryx gave a deep rumbling sound. For the first time Mara understood it. It was laughter. The mountain shook again. Elena looked upward. We have to leave. Everyone began moving toward the entrance. But Mara stopped. She looked back. The prison was empty now. Thousands of dragons were flying toward the open sky. Some had been trapped for decades. Others had never seen sunlight. They rose together. A storm of wings. Oryx stood beside Mara. Mara looked up at him. Are you leaving too? The dragon stared at her. Then he lowered his head. Mara placed her forehead against his. She whispered, You don't owe me anything. Oryx stayed. Mara smiled. Then I suppose we're both terrible at saying goodbye. They climbed out of the mountain as it collapsed behind them. Blackmere was waiting. Hundreds of villagers stood in the square. No one spoke. Mara looked at them. The same people who had watched her dragged away. The same people who had lowered their eyes. The same people who had decided her life was an acceptable payment. Her father pushed through the crowd. Mara. She ran to him. He held her so tightly that she could barely breathe. My little girl. Mara closed her eyes. For the first time in years she felt completely safe. Then her father saw Elena. He froze. Mara stepped aside. Her mother looked at him. He stared at her as though the dead had walked back into his life. Elena? Her mother began crying. Mara watched her parents embrace. And something inside her finally healed. Not completely. Some wounds don't disappear. But they stop bleeding. Behind them, Rowan Hale was dragged forward in chains. Mara looked at him. He lowered his head. Please. Mara said nothing. Rowan looked at her. I was afraid. Mara remembered the iron around her wrists. So was I. Rowan's eyes filled. I thought the dragon would kill us all. Mara looked toward Oryx. The ancient dragon stood behind her. No. Her voice was calm. You were afraid of a monster. She looked at the broken chains lying on the ground. And you became one. Rowan was taken away. His son followed. The village would eventually face the Emperor's judgment. The stolen lands were returned. The magistrate's office was dissolved. And the mountain prison was sealed, not to imprison the dragons again, but to preserve the history of what had happened there. Mara's life changed too. She did not become an empress. She did not become a warrior. She didn't need a crown. She became the first keeper in generations. A bridge between humans and dragons. But she never forgot the night she was chained to Sentinel Ridge. Years later, people would tell the story differently. Children would hear that a dragon had descended from the heavens to rescue a beautiful young woman. They would say Mara was chosen because she was special. They would say destiny had brought her to Aurochs. Mara always corrected them. No, she would tell them. That isn't how it happened. She would show them the scar around her wrist. People chose to hurt me. Then she would point toward Aurochs. And he chose to stop them. The old dragon would usually close his eyes as though he had heard the story too many times. Mara would smile. But the most important lesson was never about the dragons. It was about the chains. Because Mara learned something on that mountain that no emperor, magistrate, or dragon could ever teach her. Sometimes the people who call themselves your protectors are the ones who place the chains around you. And sometimes the creature everyone calls a monster is the first one brave enough to ask whether you want to be free. Mara had been sent to the mountain as a sacrifice. She was supposed to disappear before sunrise. Instead, she came down with her mother alive, an empire changed forever, and an ancient dragon walking beside her. The villagers had believed Mara was the price they had to pay to survive. They were wrong. She was never the price. She was the reason the truth finally came to light. And Aurochs? He had spent 40 years wandering beneath empty skies after losing the rider he loved. He could have returned to the empire. He could have chosen another rider. He could have disappeared into the mountains forever. But when he saw Mara chained to that stone, he recognized something familiar. A woman abandoned by the people who should have protected her. A soul refusing to beg. A person who, even while facing death, still apologized to the creature everyone else feared. So he broke her chains. And stayed. Because sometimes destiny doesn't arrive wearing a crown. Sometimes it arrives as a terrified woman standing alone in the cold. Sometimes it has bruises around its wrists. Sometimes it has tears in its eyes. And sometimes when the whole world decides you are worthless. One ancient creature looks at you and knows the truth. You were never the sacrifice. You were the one worth saving.